What's up, guys? I'm Tyler, and with me is my co-host Curtis. We are the Glory UGA guys, and we are glad to have you back on another edition of the Glory UGA podcast here on Dog Sports Radio. You can follow us on Twitter at Glory_UGA. We always love the interaction with you guys and love to get your thoughts on the world of Georgia sports. You can also follow Dog Sports Radio on Twitter at Dogs Radio. As for the show today, we are going to focus on the offensive line today. And really, after watching us play this year, you probably realize this is not going to be the most pleasant conversation in the world. But considering the critical importance of controlling the line of scrimmage, even though it's not necessarily a pleasant conversation, it's one that definitely needs to be had. And I know this is nothing new. If you watch us play, you guys know how the offensive line fared this year. So this will be the second installment of our review preview series, where we are taking a look back at the performance of each positional unit through the course of the 2016 season, and then we're also going to be previewing what's ahead for each unit in the 2017 season. So a little bit of a review, a little bit of a preview here. We covered the quarterback position last week, but today it's all about the big uglies up front. All right, Curtis, there is no sugarcoating this. I'm not even going to try to put lipstick on this pig. It was bad. In fact, let's get creative in describing just how bad it was. Let's see. Think of the words we can come up with. It was appalling, right? Woeful, atrocious, dreadful. See, digging deep in my vocabulary here. Unacceptable, wretched, miserable, astoundingly substandard. So you guys get the point. It was bad. No bueno, right? But as a team, we only averaged 4.6 yards a carry, which is down from 6 yards a carry in 2014 and 5.1 yards a carry in 2015. We also gave up 1.85 sacks a game this year in 2016, which compared to 1.1 sacks a game in 15 and 1.3 sacks a game in 2014. It's not a good look. So, Kurt, my first question for you is pretty basic. Looking at those numbers, looking at how we played this year, what in the hell was the problem with the offensive line this past season?
We were just overmatched, really. I think the biggest thing was the scheme. Not only the scheme we were trying to run, but at the same time, the people we had in positions. You look at someone like Greg Pike, who is, a top guard.
He was a career guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think playing out of position, for me, that might have been the core of all this. Well, I don't say it was the core. It was a major factor. Guys playing out of positions. Pike. Who else on the line would you say was playing out of position somewhat?
Probably Isaiah Wynn.
Yeah, I still don't understand why we insist on playing Isaiah Wynn, who's a 280-pound lineman, whose greatest asset is his quickness and footwork, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's his greatest asset. So why would we insist on playing him on the interior while playing a grad transfer with lead in his feet at one tackle, and then, as you mentioned with Pike, a career guard with solid athleticism but T-Rex arms at the other tackle? That's my biggest, and that really goes back to my biggest issue with this coaching staff overall in year one. It's just plain personnel usage. The examples are manifold. Let's look on the defense side of the ball. Just look at how long it took us to realize Juwan Briscoe couldn't hold up a man coverage. But we went through all the spring practice, went through all the summer practice, and he was the guy. And it was clear from day one out there in terms of when it came to game time, the guy couldn't hold up a man coverage, but we stuck with him. And I know with Wynn's lack of size, he isn't ideal at tackle either, right?
Not really, no. There were times when he was a tackle getting pushed back.
Yeah, so, Wynn's not an ideal tackle either. He doesn't have that size. But really considering our options, I still maintain Wynn was probably our best option at left tackle. And go back to 2015. He held up just fine manning that position for the second half of the 2015 campaign. So he's already played there and shown he can handle it.
Oh, I agree. But when you're talking about right tackle, we didn't have anyone better than Pike to put there, I'll say.
Well, why not do this? Why not put Wynn
I could have seen Wynn at left on Catalina, right?
Exactly. That's what I was begging for this. Actually, I said this before the season, and maybe it's a little confirmation bias on my part. I don't know, but so I don't understand why we didn't at least try that. Put Wynn left tackle, slide Catalina over right tackle, put Pike back in his more natural position of guard, which gives you more size in the interior, which is what was killing us all season. We shouldn't have the beef inside to be the kind of team that we wanted to be. I still cannot figure out why we didn't at least try that.
They said they tried everything in practice. We don't know how ugly some things could have gotten in practice either.
Yeah, we also met a coaching staff who thought Juwan Briscoe was the answer all through spring and all through summer at corner.
I don't know, because they also said that
they said Baker was coming along, but still they went ahead and put Briscoe out there, and it took a third of the season.
There's a lot of things that go into it. Maybe Baker was having trouble picking up the playbook right away. I mean, there's different things that can separate you just that little.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And look, I fully realize that the coaches are way smarter than me, and they have a lot more information.
They're paying millions, and we're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that I know more about football than Kirby Smart or Sam Pittman or Jim Chaney, and that's just, I don't. I'll just be flat out honest, but I just don't. Then they have a lot more information to work off of by virtue of the fact that they, like you said, they do see these guys in practice every day, and I respect that. I generally try to refrain from like second guessing play calling and things like that because they have so much more information to work off of than what we do. But what I have an issue with is the fact that we just never tried anything different in a game. I know that Kirby said over and over throughout the season that if we had anybody better, we put him out there, and they tried different combinations in practice. I get that, but at some point when it never got better on the field in the game, why not? What does it hurt to at least try, just to see what it does in the game? I don't know. I think it got to the point really where our coaches were just being obstinate, like almost like, it seemed to me like it was like a bunker mentality. You know what I'm talking about? Like with all the criticism of the play of the offensive line throughout the season, it never stopped because it never really got that much better. It's the whole idea of like hey, you tell us you know better, we'll show you. You know, that kind of thing where it's just that bunker mentality. They dig in and they just get stubborn with it. I really just can't understand the reluctance to at least try some different combinations. I don't know. It's tough because they do see it more than we do. And I know as a coach, I've got a little coaching in my background as well. Like, you may think, based on what you saw in the spring and fall camp, that is your best grouping. But sometimes you put guys on the field and it just clicks a little bit different than it does in practice. I don't know.
But it's so much easier to say that when we're not the ones being paid to do it, and we're not the ones that see it every day.
Right, and our jobs aren't on the line. I totally get that.
Because our livelihood and everything doesn't depend on it. We're just fans.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I guess it goes back to what I said. They see a lot more than I do, and I try to refrain from criticizing play calling stuff like that and personal decisions too much, but it's just hard to imagine this is the best we have. Because I've seen Isaiah Wynn play left tackle. I know he could do a better job playing left tackle than what Tyler Catalina did this year. I know he could because I saw it with my own eyes for half the season in 2015. He wasn't perfect out there, but he was clearly better than what Catalina put up there last year, right? I mean, was he not?
I mean, yeah, but I think they were also more worried about the guards. Like, look at the bowl game. The reason they moved it in was because the guards couldn't get the job done.
I understand you'd be worried about the guards, but by moving Wynn to left tackle, that allows you to potentially move Pike, who's a borderline all-conference guard, back to his more natural position at guard. So I don't know if that's a great argument because you have a guy who's played guard his entire career.
I mean, argument or not, I hate to say this, but they're paid to do it, and we're not. We can sit here and second guess the whole time, but it's so easy to be the person to say that. But I mean, maybe the win didn't fit what they want to do in their system.
Well, clearly that must have been the case. I mean, and everything you're saying is fair. I get it. It's just, as a guy who loves Georgia, I mean, it was just frustrating to watch.
But I mean, it's just frustrating how this whole season's been nothing but second guessing.
I agree with that. I think there's been way too much that going on considering what the raw material that our coaching staff did have to work with. And that's part of the issue here. The raw material that we had on the offensive line to work with, just it wasn't going to cut it regardless. I mean, like I said, you're trying to put lipstick on a pig.
Don't, let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of truth in that for sure. And like, I know Pittman has a great faith, and he has a great faith in his ability to coach him up, as he should, as Pittman should, based on his track record. But I think the issue with this group wasn't so much coaching him up, right? I think Kirk kept saying that, we're going to coach him up, we're going to get better. That's how we improve that's fine. We're just going to coach him up and get better. But I don't think that was so much the issue. I think as technicians, most of our linemen were above average, most of them. I think the issue was simply one of just size, right? And I don't think there's anything that Pittman can do about that. You can't coach that up, can you?
It just came down to size and strength.
Yeah, I think that's really what it came down to. And just not a fit either for what we wanted to do.
I mean, I don't care what system you run. Kublano's never going to be a fit at center.
Yeah, I'm trying to guard my words carefully here because I do not like ripping our guys.
Kublano was a great leader, but as a center, the guy was terrible.
I know. Yeah, I had to be real about it. Like, I don't want to rip our guys. They put so much on the line for the G, and it pains me to have to say negative things. But you're right, man. Like, to be real, he didn't cut it this year, and not really too much last year. I think it was a little bit better last year, I think by virtue of the fact that we weren't trying to run this power-based scheme all the time. He just wasn't a fit, and God, it was ugly. It was flat out ugly for him a lot of the time this past year. But I don't know. So I think personnel usage is part of it, but I also want to bring this into the equation. How much of this season and the uncharacteristic consistency issues of our running game, how much of that was really on the offensive line? Like, yeah, they had issues getting any kind of consistent movement. And yes, some of our interior linemen often found themselves, like Capilano, like you mentioned, driven back into our own backfield, and even win quite a few times as well.
I think we did run better when we went to more of a spread system, but at the same time, we were having to do a lot of gimmicky type things with our offensive line because they were just so poor. I mean, it didn't matter a lot of the time what we were going to do. There was no chance in running.
But was this so much that they were poor, like these guys just weren't good linemen, or that they weren't big enough and therefore couldn't run the system that we wanted to run, the more power-based scheme?
It's a little bit of both. I honestly don't think Kublana should have been starting at all for our team.
Well, who'd you put there? Gaillard?
But I'm saying in general, I mean, I think that's how bad our offensive line was. I think Kublano maybe fits somewhere, but I don't find him as an SEC caliber.
Oh, so you're saying Kublana he has no business ever starting for Georgia?
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
And I look at our guard position. Dyshawn Sims is terrible.
Dyshawn Sims has no business ever playing.
Terrible, and then Lamont Gilliard's barely a year removed from switching from defensive tackle. So I mean, that's what we had to rely on at guard.
I thought Gilliard had some moments though. He wasn't great all the time.
He has some good moments, but I'm saying the fact is that that's who we were having to rely on at
guard. Yeah. Yes, we did have to rely on them at guard, but again, I still say we could have slid Pike in there.
But still, one of them has to play guard. Then still, either way.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, look, there's no getting around it. The raw material there was just it wasn't much. I mean, you're just trying to make there wasn't much to work with there. I'm gonna try to guard my words here. I don't want to say too. I don't want to get in trouble here. But I do think part of their issue was a function of the scheme they were asked to run. Is that not fair to say, at least to some degree?
I don't know. They were pretty bad last year in a completely different scheme.
But they weren't near as bad as we were this year. I mean, we still averaged over 5 yards a carry last year.
I'm still saying they're still terrible.
Yeah, they weren't great, but we were still almost a full yard a carry better in the run game.
When Nick Chubb went down last year, our offense went in the crapper.
Yeah, well, Chubb, yeah. Well, I wouldn't say the crapper. We're still better. Even after Chubb went down, we were better than we were on offense this year.
Missouri, we scored, we had to go to overtime to beat Southern. Our offense was just very poor last year as much, too. So it's not like it was just this year.
Yeah, our offensive line was, but I think part of that was also a function of who was playing quarterback. We still ran the ball. Even after Chubb went down, we didn't run the ball as well as we were running with Chubb, because Chubb was averaging almost 7.5 yards a carry. But we still ran the ball much better than we ran this year.
I mean, I'm saying that, I agree, but I'm saying that it's not like it was a huge, drastic drop-off.
No, we were terrible the second half of last year on offense. I mean, it was dreadful.
Just a carryover, that it just got to the point you couldn't mask it.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
I also got to think about this, the years before, at the end of the Rick era, teams hadn't done what they're doing now, because they're trying to compete with Bama. You're seeing bigger guys across the board at all positions and deep, because that's what teams are having to do to try to compete with Bama. So now that game's changing, and these smaller linemen isn't going to be as big now because teams are making changes on their line of scrimmage.
I think it depends on what scheme you're looking at, though. Still, some of the teams that run up-tempo, spread-based stuff, they want quicker offensive line that can get out in space and block in space, because they run the RPO stuff. They want guys that can get out and run. But teams that are like us that want to power you, then yes, there's definitely, you're right, a trend towards the bigger linemen, because you've got to be able to have to contend with the types of guys that Bama has in the SEC. That's clear. You're right about that. I think that these guys, as bad as it was, and like I said, I'm not going to make any bones about it. It was horrible this year. But I will say these guys fought all year. Okay, I want to give them some credit.
Their effort, it's not that they gave up, but they were just bad.
So I think they fought, but I think they gave everything they had to do. I think they did everything they possibly could to do what they were asked to do. I do think at times we were a little stubborn, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not big on the second guessing, but I do think it's appropriate to a degree here. I think that we talked about several of them were playing out of position, and some of that was by necessity, and there's no doubt. You can't deny it. Some of it was just flat out of necessity with what Rick had left us to work with. But then you exacerbate that, the fact that guys are playing out of position, you exacerbate that they're being asked to run a power-based, largely man-blocking scheme that just conflicted with who they were. I mean, for a team to run that type of scheme when you're consistently trying to go with 21 and 22 personnel, 2 backs, 2 tight ends, and have any sort of sustained offensive success, you have to be flat out dominant up front with a bunch of giant road graders in the interior. We just didn't have that. Like the Arkansas offensive line that Pittman had, the line that was famously the quote, the largest line in all of football, including college NFL, that's the type of line that can run the power-based attack and have success consistently with it. But we weren't in the same stratosphere as that line and the similar lines when it comes to physical makeup. We weren't. Given the physical limitations of that line, I have a hard time sometimes understanding why in the hell our coaches continue to think they would have success with 7 guys blocking 8 or 9 in the box, particularly when those 7 guys are so undersized. It kind of defies logic with me. And I hate the second guessing, but does that not make sense to a degree with you?
It makes sense, but at the same time, I think the coaches knew they had leadway this year, and at the same time, were trying to get their systems implemented. So next year, they weren't having to try to run through implementations again.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think Kirby is big on establishing his system, especially in year one, and I get that. I think that's, in some ways, that's wise as it sets you up for the future. But I will also say this. When you try to put a square peg, round hole together in year one, and it doesn't work out that well to the tune of a 7-5 regular season with losses to Vanderbilt and to Tech, and just almost losing to Missouri, which was a really bad Missouri team, although we did find a way to win that game. It may have set us up for the future and being stubborn and obstinate with it, but it also reduces our margin for error. Now Kirby has been facing questions all season long. He's still going to face those questions going into 2017. Are we going to be better offensively? Is the line going to get better? And if it doesn't, then the heat's going to get turned up. So he's kind of put himself in a corner here where we have to improve pretty quickly, right?
You can say that, but I just really comes down to, I think we had to work with what we had, and at the same time, we wanted to do what we want to do because we're trying to run off people at the same time. We're not going to sit here and say we're going to do these things to make it work because we need to get our people in here. He's processing people, pretty much saying, if you can't do what I want to do, get out.
And there is a lot to be said for that. I think that's a huge part of establishing your culture and what you want to do. And like I said, setting us up for the future. There's a big part. And it's a really tough balancing. And I don't envy Kirby at all because that's a tough job. And I actually think he did a really good job in year one in terms of trying to establish his culture and the identity he wants for this football team. And I think as towards the end of the season, you start to see kind of the benefits of that, right? I think we started to see it come around at least somewhat. You could see kind of light at the end of the tunnel, right? A little bit. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And it's a tough balancing act, but I do think by virtue of some of the issues we had offensively and getting the run game going and what we're doing schematically, I think we really need a big year offensively and take a big step forward so he can kind of get that pressure off of him. I'm still all for Kirby, okay?
I'm going to say this, either way, no matter which way you look at it, our offensive line still could have done anything to make life easier on Eason.
Yeah, because they have and that's something I want to talk about too. Like some of the pass blocking issues, pretty much all of the pass blocking issues on the edge, that is just flat out on Catalina Pike. That had nothing to do with scheme whatsoever, at all. But and I guess that kind of goes back to personnel decisions.
What you did with Wynn, there were times, no matter what position he was at, he was still getting driven back into the backfield.
Yeah, Wynn and Cablano both. I mean, it happened time after time, just far too often. And then as the season went along, I want to give the coaches some credit here. We did spread the field more. We kind of recognized that our line wasn't the.
Look at the TCU game. We were in the spread 90% of the shots.
Well, after a first half of being stubborn about it, we did open up in the second half and spread the field out, and we had a lot of success doing that. I just don't know if we did it consistently enough. But again, you got to strike that balance between trying to win games and do what's best for the 2016 team versus setting your team and your program up for the long term into the future. That's a really tough balancing act. And it wasn't always pretty. It didn't always work out. But we'll see how it plays out moving in the future. I think we might have actually done a good job setting ourselves up moving forward. Be interesting. It'll be interesting. All right, so I don't know. Ultimately, I guess I thought our coaching staff took some undeserved flack for a lot of different things. I really do. I think you mentioned some of the second guessing. It was too much. I think they took a lot of undeserved flack for a lot of different things that were completely out of their control. But I do think the handling the offensive line is one area where I think the criticism might have been at least moderately earned. I do. I have to say that. And I still believe in Kirby. I absolutely 100% have faith he will take us where we want to go. I truly believe that with all of my heart. He's going to take us to the promised land. But I do think the failure to work with what we had in terms of offensive line this year held us back some. And again, you can look at it one of two ways. Are the coaches failure to work with that offensive line, or is just the fact the offensive line was so bad there's nothing coaches could do to work with? They were handicapped by that. And I think there's some merit to both views there.
Yeah, I think you also got to think of what Pittman wants to do. I mean, this is his line. He's trying to set a standard also.
Yeah, he absolutely is. Absolutely. And hopefully he'll have some better materials to be working with here in the very near future. All right, so enough rehashing of those painful memories. It really is painful to me just to even think about it. But so let's move forward and discuss what this unit is going to look like in 2017. Now in Cablano, Catalina, and Pike, we lose 3 starters up front. And you're going to hear all the offseason talk about how, hey, Georgia's losing 3 starters on offensive line. How much better can they be? But I've also heard quite a few voices out there argue the old cliche that even though we're losing 3 stars up front, it's a good thing when you consider the performance last year. So, Curtis, in your view, is that really the case where losing those 3 seniors is actually a good thing?
Yeah, because I'm going to be honest, I never saw them act like seniors. There was all those times they would kill drives, jumping off sides. I mean, all the time they're committing mistakes that you expect from freshmen. So I never saw anything that made me think, wow, glad we have a senior right here.
Shots fired, man. Don't hold back, dude. But then these guys were leaders off the field, though. That's a big part of the game.
On the field, they cost us just as much as freshmen might. And you can do all you can off the field, but if you're not going to perform on the field, then what's the point?
There's a lot of truth in that, man. I absolutely agree with you there. I think it's kind of a talent and fit versus experience argument here, right? Because I think we're going to be more talented up front. And we're going to get to some of these guys coming in here this season in just a second. We'll go through each one of them. But I do think we're going to be more talented up front. And I think our personnel will definitely be more suitable, will be a more suitable fit for the power schemes and the bully ball that we clearly want to be our offensive identity, right? Mm-hmm. But the trade-off is that even though that's the case, we're going to have a better fit. We're going to have more talent up front, but the trade-off is we're going to be significantly younger up front. There's a really good chance we're going to have a lot of youth up front with potentially upwards near 2 to 3 true freshmen getting the opportunity to start or get some serious playing time. So do you think the talent and those fit upgrades outweigh the potential inexperience up front?
I do, because, like I was saying, look what we got with upperclassmen. Cublano continuously in the backfield.
The experience didn't matter much there, did it?
No, not at all. It didn't help him, if anything.
Yeah, I hear you. And look, we clearly, our coaches, to their credit, and this is where they're really going to get the job done, is on the recruiting front. We clearly recognize offensive line as a need. And we have 6 offensive linemen either committed or already signed. And of those, so like DeMarcus Hayes, of those 6, he's already signed. He's an early enrollee. He's on campus right now. But we've got 6 overall that are already signed. So of those guys, let me go through them real quick. We've got Isaiah Wilson, who's 6'7", 350 pounds. He's ranked number 32 nationally in the composite rankings. DeMarcus Hayes, the JUCO transfer, is already on campus as an early enrollee, 6'6", 320 pounds. Andrew Thomas, 74th nationally in the composite rankings, 6'5", 335 pounds. Satori Johnson, 6'3", 340. D'Anthony Demery, 6'5", 320. He's played tackle for us. Justin Schaefer, along with his former teammate from Cedar Grove, Notori Johnson, also a guard prospect. He's 6'5", 350. So what's the pattern that you're noticing here?
Getting bigger.
Bigger. And Curry made it very clear as soon as he took the job, we got to get bigger up front. And man, he has been absolutely true to his word.
Not only are these guys big, but if you watch their film, they actually move well for big guys.
Yeah, they are. These are elite prospects. Isaiah Wilson, he's 6'7", 350. Actually, depending on some estimates, he might be a little bigger than 350 right now, but he moves well to the point that he's 32nd nationally overall and just dominated the Under Armour All-American game. Just heard raves coming out of there from him. I'm sure a lot of you guys watch the practice on ESPN. He looks good, man, and he can move for a guy that big. He's legit. Hayes is the same way. You might say, well, God, we just had a grad transfer come in from Rhode Island, Catalina, that everyone was really high on, and he was a disaster. So why should we get all that excited about Hayes? I'm telling you guys, different story. Hayes is a lot more athletic. He's not a grad transfer. He's a true JUCO transfer. But he's a lot more athletic. If you look at his tape, 6'6", 320, he can handle the speed, or he's at least better equipped to handle the speed rushers than Catalina ever was. Then you got Andrew Thomas, who just blew people away. I think today the Rivals rankings were I guess it was their final rankings were released, and he moved up 88 spots into the top 100 based on his performance in the Army All-American game against other big-time elite prospects. So, he's a guy that's 6'5", 335 pounds. That guy, he's going to be able to hopefully man one of those tackle positions in the near future. And Torrey Johnson at guard, 340. Justin Schaefer at guard, 350. And the biggest guy we had at guard this year was Gaillard, and he was right around the 300 range. So it's a significant size upgrade. Okay, significant. So, but of those guys, which 2 to 3 guys do you think have the best chance of these incoming freshmen, or in Hayes' case, a JUCO transfer? Which of those guys do you think has the best chance to come in and play right away?
Right away, I think it's 2 people. I think you're going to see Hayes and Isaiah Wilson.
Right away? Like plug and play almost?
I believe so, yes.
I think that they're the 2 leading candidates. I think Hayes, since he's got some experience not SEC level, but at least a collegiate level.
And early, too.
Yeah, and he's an early enrollee, absolutely. So he's going to be here for spring practice. He's got the size, and he's got the athleticism, at least more so than we had last year. And the question becomes, okay, if it's not Hayes and Wilson, who is it going to be? That's the reason I think these 2 guys are probably the ones that have the best chance. Because if you're looking at tackle, who's it going to be?
I think the rest are a little bit of projects. Yes, Thomas jumped in the rankings, but I believe he needs to get bigger and stronger.
I think he would benefit from a redshirt year, absolutely, and take over for Hayes at left tackle eventually.
The project, he's got the base and everything that we want, but he's still a project.
Dimmer, yeah, he's definitely he's the most raw of all the linemen we're going to sign.
Schaefer is a great redshirt candidate. I think long term he could be good, but he needs a redshirt year. And then at the same time, I think Notori has a chance, but the fact that he's not an early enrollee or something.
Yeah. That does set you back a little bit, especially offensive line when there's a lot to learn. It's a tough position to come in and play as a true freshman if you're not up to speed.
And I just believe that we're so much more needy at the tackle position.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if we don't, we have at least options on the inside. I honestly don't know who would be the leading candidates outside of Wilson Hayes to play our 2 tackle spots. Maybe you say Isaiah Wynn. Like if Hayes can't play left tackle, maybe we have to move Isaiah Wynn out there. But I'd much rather have Hayes out at left tackle. But at right tackle, I mean, who are your options? You're talking about Auden Bynum? I mean, what? A Pat Allen, maybe? Maybe. I just don't know who the options are. So I think it's absolutely a clear path for Isaiah Wilson. If he is remotely competent when he comes in, I think he's almost a shoo-in for right tackle. Do you think Wilson has a chance to ever move over and play left tackle?
I think long term does. Maybe once he gets into a program and everything, you'll see him his body's not, he's a big guy, but he's not super fat, like bad way. But I think if you were to see him put on, just to get into a real strength and conditioning program, possibly. I think maybe a better bet for left tackle.
Yeah, I don't know if Wilson has the wingspan to play left. Although his footwork is really good, I don't know if it's quite elite left tackle. I think he could be a competent left tackle. I don't think he'd be an elite left tackle. I think he's an elite right tackle. So I think it's probably in his best interest to keep him at right tackle. And I think Thomas is the one who long term probably is going to fill that left tackle spot, Andrew Thomas. And I think we'll be in great shape after Thomas takes over, probably after Hayes leaves, if Hayes is up to the job. It'll be interesting, though. But I want to touch on Notori and Schaefer. You think Schaefer is a better chance for a redshirt than Notori is?
Yes, I think Notori, because Schaefer's bounced around in high school, tackle to guard, where Notori's been consistent.
That's true. I will say, watching the state championship game, I thought Schaefer looked better than Notori did, in at least that one game. That's one game. It's a small sample size, but he looked good.
Also on just the fact that he's bigger than Notori.
Yeah, he is, but that's what we need right now. I think long term, both those guys, those might be our 2 guards of the future. I think I'm really high on both of them. But it's just good to have size and have options. That competition is going to raise the level of everyone's play, so it's good to have there. All right, real quickly though, we would be remiss if we ignored some of the other guys who are already on campus, particularly a couple of signings from the 2016 class. So, Kurt, I'm going to get your take on them real quick. Guys like Ben Cleveland at 6'6", 340, Solomon Kinley 6'4", 335, Sam Madden even because I know he wasn't a highly rated recruit, but he's got the size that Pittman seems to want, 6'6", 335. Any of those guys or anyone else I didn't mention that might have a chance to sneak in some playing time this year to get into the thick of the competition?
Yeah, I think you're going to see Ben Cleveland and Solomon Kinley. I think they'll push for 2 guard positions because I think you're going to see more than likely Gaillard. I think he's the best bet because they tried to put Wynn at center and he couldn't.
Yeah, I think Gilliard's going to play center this year, if I had to guess right now.
Wynn couldn't get the snaps down or remember the play calls.
Yeah.
So I see Gilliard there, so I think it's going to really open up the guard competition. I think he's a real good candidate to start at guard.
And Wynn will be a senior this year. After this year, I think you're going to have essentially a 4-man competition for those 2 guard spots. You're going to have a competition between Naturi Johnson, Justin Schaefer coming in this year in the 2017 class, and then going back to the 2016 class, Ben Cleveland and Solomon Kinley. I think those 4 guys are going to fight for those 2 guard spots. A lot of people still think Cleveland is a tackle. Do you think he's more of a tackler or a guard?
I think long-term guard. I think he'd be great at guard because he's kind of quick on his feet. So I could see him being like one of those pulling guards that would just demolish people. I don't think. I mean, maybe he gets more polished. It hurt him in high school that he didn't consistently play tackle. So maybe if we were to see him consistently, it would change. But I just don't know about that.
And I've seen this guy live a couple of times. I don't live too far from Stevens County where he goes. I live in Athens, which is not too far. But my in-laws actually have a house up in Lake Hartwell, so we go through there and I had a chance to see him play some. And I also saw him at camps up here. And Cleveland's a good prospect. I'm high on his size and his strength, obviously. If you've seen the guy, I mean, he's just a beast, man. But his footwork isn't great. It needs some work. And I don't know. I think he could be a competent right guard. I don't think he could ever really play left. I think he'd be a competent right tackle. I don't think he could ever play left tackle. I just don't think he's that kind of player. But while I think he could be a competent right tackle, I think he could be a really good guard. I think that's his best position, especially considering the kind of beef that Pittman wants up front on the interior with this power scheme.
Imagine a offensive line with him at right guard and Wilson at right tackle. I mean, you've got over 700 pounds.
That's nuts, and that's what we want, though. So I think Cleveland's got a chance. I don't want to write him off yet. He took the red shirt last year, and he had a lot to learn. And I actually heard some good things about him from a few people around the program as the season went along. So he was developing. So let's hope that continues in year 2. And Solomon Kinley, there was always talk about him maybe getting a chance to get in there. He played one snap all season against Missouri. And now we're not sure we can even give him a red shirt because of that one snap. Kirby's trying. We haven't heard anything definitive on that front. We'll see. Hopefully he can get that red shirt back. But I think he's a guy the coaches are high on. But it'll be interesting to see how he matches up with the guys that are bringing in, and Naturi Johnson and Justin Schaefer to play those guard positions. It'll be very interesting. All right. So wrapping it up here. Now this is probably an exercise in futility because we have all of spring, the entirety of offseason workouts, all of fall camp for things to develop. But let's take a quick stab at this anyway. If you had to project our starting offensive line, game 1 next season against Appy State, what does it look like?
Game 1, all right, I'm going to do this just so I think it's game 1. I don't think it'll last the whole year, but I think you'll possibly see Wilson or Hayes at left tackle, Kinley at right guard or left guard.
Okay.
Center Lamont Gilliard, right guard Cleveland or someone, and right tackle Wilson or not Wilson.
Wilson. Right.
No, you'll see Wynn at right tackle to start the
right
season.
Tackle Wynn?
I think to start the season.
Interesting. And then
I think Wilson will take it over. I just don't know if they'll have faith in him right away from game 1.
Yeah, there's no way to know. It really depends on what kind of shape he comes in and how quick he is to learn. And how much better, because he's going to have to be flat out better than some of these other guys, and I think he might well be. Interesting, though, Wynn at right tackle. I never considered that, but it's a possibility. I don't know if he has a size at right tackle, but hey, we've only got so many options. You're right about that. So for me, just a rough projection. I'm with you. I'm going to say Hayes at left tackle. I'm going to still stick with Wynn at left guard. That's where he played all of last year. They seem to like him there for whatever reason. Definitely with you at Gilliard playing center. At right guard, I don't know where to go. It's either Schaefer, Kinley, Cleveland, or Naturi Johnson. I think
it would probably be one of the guys who's been there.
I'm going to say we're going to start with Kinley.
Yeah,
I think he'll start. Because he made some waves during the season. Almost got a chance to crack a lineup. Didn't quite make it in there other than that one snap. But that doesn't mean it's the way it's going to stay the whole year. I think that competition, especially for some of these young guys, give them a chance to get their feet wet. I think they're going to see playing time early too, though. Give them a chance to get their feet wet and develop and practice. And as the season goes on, that competition is going to remain open. So we'll see how that plays out. And then I think also Isaiah Wilson at right tackle. I really do think he's probably going to start game 1.
I hope he starts game 1. I'll say that. I hope he does, but I just don't know.
It's hard to say. It's really hard to project a guy on the offensive line as being able to play game 1. No matter how big you are, because it's a different world. It's a man's world in the SEC. on the offensive line. So it'll be interesting. If I just make a basic prediction, that's what I go with. All right, last thing. So in the end, are we better up front next year?
Yeah, because like I said, I think, the experience sometimes can do good for you, but at the same time, I didn't see enough out of our experience for that to be a reason for next year us to be better. I think we'll see freshmen or underclassmen mistakes, but I think their overall ability and their athletic ability and what they bring to the table will outweigh some of that inexperience.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the answer to that question, are we going to be better up front, is I don't want to say an emphatic yes. It still remains to be seen, but I do have faith that we will be better up front next year. I think we're going to have guys that are just much more of a fit for what we want to do offensively, and we should be able to remedy the one major issue that we had last season, and that was just simply insufficient size, particularly in terms of what we wanted our identity to be. So I think it's just going to be closer to what we want to be and allow us to kind of move forward the identity that we want to have as an offensive football team. All right, guys, so there you have it. There's the review of the 2016 offensive line and also at the same time the preview of the 2017 offensive line. Really hope you enjoyed the show today. We definitely appreciate you guys taking the time of your day to check in and listen to the show today and support us. We really do always appreciate that. And you can check back with us later this week. We'll have the 3rd edition of our Prospect Battle Series. We'll be stacking up the wide receiver position and taking a look at Mark Webb versus Jeremiah Holloman. So for Curtis, I'm Tyler. As always, go Dogs.